What is up, CSGs? In this video, I'm going to talk about Cam Whitmore's explosion onto the scene for the Houston Rockets. Also, Jalen Green, what has changed from him in the recent games? And lastly, should Alperen Sengun be a max player? I'm going to answer all that right now. Tap in. Enjoy. The Rockets Chop Shop is your one-stop shop for all your basketball needs, for highlights, analysis, podcasts. We do it all here at the Rockets Chop Shop. Make sure you hit the like button on the videos that you watch if you enjoy them. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications from all the great drops that we have on the channel. Also, you can visit the Chop Shop merch store and get you some of the swaggiest gear in the Houston Rockets kingdom. And if you want, you can always support the channel directly through donations. And if you want, you can support us through our partnerships with our sponsors. The Rockets Chop Shop is made by fans, for fans, and we're going to keep rocking and keep dropping that heat.
This is something I know.
So your Rockets are coming off a thrilling victory over the LA Lakers in a game where we basically destroyed them. It seems like LA struggles playing in Houston, but this was a game where everybody got to show a little bit of what they could be in the future. A much-needed game after, some of the slumps that we've seen from the Rockets, the terrible loss to Portland, the terrible loss to Brooklyn. Even, the game against the Hornets was like, they weren't that good. So it was really hard to say. You had the road trip from hell, which we just lost every damn game pretty much. So this was a much needed victory. It was kind of a reassurance to the fan base about what we actually have building. With these young guys, it's going to be a roller coaster, right? If you get a couple bad games in a row, it's like, blow it up, do this. Guys want to trade everybody. When they play good, you kind of reminds you of what, the long-term outlook for the team is. And for me, the way I look at it is always take the macro view, and then you can observe some micro development and then, glean some things from there. But, never get too high or too low with any of the players because, once again, they're young. And with these young guys, one thing about drafting a lot of lottery players, they're going to have flashes of talent. The way you assess that, whether it's something real or not, is consistency. And that's something that we're trying to see from a lot of our players. But one guy that is on the scene and showing up in recent games, as especially on the offensive end and sneakily a good defender, is one Cameron Whitmore. In this game against the Lakers, Cam played 18 minutes, went 7 of 12 from the field, 58%, 33% from three. Also scored a quick 20 points and got to the line 6 times in just those 18 minutes. Zeros on the assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers. Had 6 rebounds. So Cam is really making an imprint as a guy that you can bring in as a spark and earning his minutes. And, you had guys like Aaron Holiday who were DMPs in this game. And when you get performances like that, it seems like Coach Udoka is trusting Cam more, right? The more he plays like this, the more he gets. But overall, just looking at the game versus the Lakers, it really came down to how the Rockets started. We started fast, we started aggressively, and the Lakers couldn't do nothing against us. But in this game, like I said, not a lot of Aaron Holiday. He went straight for the gusto with some of the good lineups. Cam was one of the first people off the bench. Amen Thompson was out there guarding. Fred only played, for Fred VanVleet, he played 37 minutes, not even the leader in the starters in minutes. So that's a game that he's trying to win. Jayshawn Tate only 18 minutes. Jeff Green has been kind of bad, but like I said on the live stream after the game, y'all got to cut Jeff some slack. Like, this is not what he's supposed to be doing. Jeff is not supposed to be relied on. He's here to tap butts and hand claps, right? Pause. So Jeff's role is not to be a guy you rely on for 30 minutes. I think we've kind of reached the limit, the expiration on Jeff's eliteness on the court, but he still provides some good minutes. But he was only 8 minutes plus 4. And then you didn't see a lot of, like I said, no Reggie Bullock, no Aaron Holiday, no Jock Landale. So this was a game we definitely had to win because we are in that mix between that 9 through 12 spot with the Lakers, trying to make it into the play-in. So definitely a smart game from Coach Udoka. He did have a lineup out there to close the third that was like a combination of every bad player in the game. It was like Fred, Dylan, Jeff, Tate, and I forgot I think it might have been Cam, to try to offset it. That almost lost the game. It got down to about 9 points, and then he snapped out of his intermittent stroke he was having and put in the players that were actually winning us the game, and we were able to cruise to victory. But once again, Alperen Sengun, Jalen Green, 65 points, combined of 14 assists, 24 rebounds. Impressive. One of the more complete Jalen Green games, and just to talk about him, and we'll talk about him a little bit more as well. Alp has a very quiet 30-point game, just kind of in the flow of the offense, nothing really hard, and played one of the best complete defensive games I've seen from him. Was able to hedge at the level of the screen, was able to guard AD, Braun, and even D'Lo on some possessions in isolation. So love to see that from him. But some things to take away from the game. Dylan Brooks was bad. I didn't like his minutes on there. Out of all the starters, he was a +4, whereas the other guys are in the double digits. Jabari +11, Sengun +15, Jalen Green +13, and then Fred +17. Dylan was, he's kind of, I had said on the live stream that he has like this thing within him that wants to just explode out, this demon of CTE, right? And he's like fighting it. You can see him fighting it, but man, it is getting real. He's been kind of putting together some bad games, and a lot of times some of the antics he does hurt the team. So that's something to keep an eye on. Let's keep an eye on that for Dylan going forward. I do want to talk about Amen Thompson, who only played 11 minutes, had 0 points, but 7 big rebounds, 3 assists, and 1 steal. I think Amen played a good game despite what the box score shows. One of my favorite plays from the game is a clip where he got a rebound off of Christian Wood's head, full like extension, diving like Megatron from the Detroit Lions over Wood, grabbing the rebound, pushing it in transition from coast to coast, got to the end of the court, floating out of bounds, hit Cam Whitmore on a wide open 3 that kind of was a little dagger for the Lakers because they called a timeout after that. I love what I'm seeing from my man. He has a lot of room to grow, but he gives you once again the flashes of what you could be. As they grow older, you want to see these young guys put together the consistency piece. And that's what we've been kind of waiting on for like the Jalen Greens of the world and some of the other younger players. Sengun, one thing you can say about him, he's consistent, right? So if you have great flashes and now it's consistent great flashes, then you lean into the category of this player is actually going to be really, really good. Just waiting on that for some of the other guys. Fred is struggling right now. Fred is struggling with a shot. Fred only shot, 0 for 0 for 0, right? Only had 3 points. I think all his points came on technical fouls, but it was a team high +17. This dude has the master of the impact without correlating with the box score. There is just something he does on the court, and he did this since you'll look at his stats, they're just trash. And then all of a sudden he's the highest +- on the court because Fred's a winner. He's a winning player. He makes key plays, defensive plays. He's a linking player on the lineups. He's a glue guy. And I think the way Coach Udoka played him is kind of how I'd like him to be played. Jalen was on ball a lot. Fred played off ball. He allowed Jalen to initiate a lot of the actions because he didn't have it going. He pressed a little bit with some of his shots, but overall it wasn't nothing egregious. And I think this kind of shows you the sweet spot for Fred is not going over, right? We don't want to see that. But if the other guys have it going, Fred just wants to fill voids, right? So if the void is filled by somebody else cooking, I think he is perfectly content with not pressing. I think he only presses when he has to do so when he's trying to win. He's a winner. If he sees these kids are fumbling and not doing what they're supposed to do and they're about to lose, then y'all get ready for a 20-shot Fred VanVleet night. If Sengun's cooking, he's going to feed him. If Jalen's cooking, he's going to feed him. The only thing Fred needs to work on, and this is a constant criticism for him that dates back years, in closing moments, he thinks he's him, and he is not him. Fred is a great player, but I do not want him taking any of the last shots unless they're wide open. And that's something he has to work on, is his late game shot selection. But otherwise, I would say 80% of the time in 80, of the minutes in the game, he is making the right decisions and putting you in position to be successful. You can also see that in the fact that he had 14 assists and only 2 turnovers, which is, his assist to turnover ratio for all the high usage guards in the league is one of the best. So shout out to Fred for that. He definitely does need to pick it up offensively. You're not making 40 M's to go over, right? I could say all the things I just said. That's cool, but you're making some money, bro. So you got to make that work for us. Like, we got to make up some things. And so I even said that if this is like the level of Fred we're going to get, and he is still a player we heavily depend on in our starting lineup and pretty much all the lineups, if Amen Thompson can take a leap, if Jalen can take a leap, if collectively the backcourt, the young backcourt can take a leap, then, I wouldn't mind not exercising Fred's third year. I hope we don't have to depend on that. Now, maybe we could restructure it and extend him out a little bit on that third year contract, because remember, he's making 40 plus M's for three years. The third year on that is going to be a team option. So the Rockets have the right to decline that option, and then Fred will go into free agency. So technically next year, if the Rockets decline his option next year, he's an expiring contract. To me, you don't make a move about Fred until one of the young guys in the backcourt declares it. And they have to declare it by being consistent, which we haven't seen as of yet. But overall, I mean, I loved the way, the players attacked their mismatches. Jalen was aggressive. I'll talk about him a little bit. Cam was aggressive. Amen was aggressive. The vets weren't that great, but, Sengun did his thing. Just overall, a good game by all the guys. Was great to see. So what I'm going to talk about now is I'm going to break down some of the key performances and performers, and looking at Cam Whitmore, Jalen Green, and Alperen Sengun, and just to see what are some things that I'm interested in these 3-4. So y'all check it out.
Here comes Cam Whitmore. Cam Whitmore! Whitmore, ladies and gentlemen. Put on a show, young man. Put on a show.
One of the things that has been apparent to me watching the Rockets play is the emergence of Cam Whitmore as a viable rotational player. And it just got me curious about what his impact is. Now, he's been a positive to me just by watching the game, but sometimes the numbers you can tease out really what's happening when Cam gets on the court. One thing I know, when he comes on, it's instant offense. Now, he had a couple of games where, his shot isn't falling, but usually when he comes on, he's doing what he's supposed to do. If you guys remember from the start of the year, before the season started, I had made notes of what Cam Whitmore could do to become a rotational player on this team. Number one thing he has to do is play hard, and he does that on a nightly basis. Number two is to run in transition. He does that on a nightly basis, one of our better transition players right now. And number three is to hit those open shots, because they're going to use him more as a spot-up guy early on in his career as he develops his handle and things like that. So he's hit all those check marks. The defense is coming along. The shot selection, it goes up and down. There's sometimes where I don't like the shot selection, and there are other times where he actually does what he's supposed to do, attacking, closeouts, getting downhill on players that he could bully, and just using his body as a weapon. So this is all like really, really high level stuff from a guy that is that young at 19 years old. He has the tools to do things a guy like Jalen can't do right now. Probably one of the best athletes on our team as far as when he explodes going to the basket. The rim pressure is there. The shot is there, 40+% 3-point shooter. I think it might have dipped down to 39% as his attempts have gone up. But just wanted to assess, what is Cam's impact on the team? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the lineups that he has been with for the Rockets this season. So looking at the two-man lineups with Cam Whitmore, him and Jabari together, 278 possessions plus 3.3. You can see him and Jalen, 14 plus 14.2, and him and Fred are a plus 18.2. So with him and Fred on the court together being the highest plus, one thing I do want to note, him and Jalen do play very well together. I know there's some concern about maybe, who should start, who should not start. I'm not going to lie. It looks like Jalen and Cam actually have some synergy going there. They do allow our pace to be a little bit faster, a lot of bit faster compared to our regular starting lineup. So he adds a different punch, and then seems like him and Jalen, especially in transition, they're both screaming down in transition really puts a lot of pressure on the defenses. You can also see the negatives, the people he's struggling on the court with right now. And struggling is a stretch. With Sengun minus 1.2, and with Dylan Brooks minus 8.2. Now, as we build this out, we're going to kind of expand out on the lineups to see, are they actually struggling? Because on two-man lineups, it means two of them on the court with a million other people. So with Sengun, the lineups Coach Udoka has played him with, they haven't been great. And to me, I kind of already figured out why this is, and we'll see why. But the biggest negative right now with Cam on the court is Dylan Brooks. And then you look at him and men together in 446 possessions, a minus 3.7. So him and a men together, that's an aggregate of all their lineups from when the season started. So to me, when it's closer to 0, you really don't put too much into it. One of the drawbacks of cleaning the glass, which is where I get their differential data from when they're sharing the court with individuals, is that you cannot filter it out by date ranges. So you just have to look at it for the entire season. I can almost guarantee that some of the most recent lineups are a plus. So that's the 2-man with Cam Whitmore. So let's look at the 3-man lineups with Cam Whitmore. So now we're teasing it out a little bit more. So you can see that when it's Cam, Jabari, and Sengun together, it's a plus 21, right? That's a 3-man lineup that is really, really elite. And 83 possessions, not a high frequency. You want to get to about 100 to see whether you can really make some noise out of a certain data point when it comes to possessions. But 83 is pretty, is decent. Plus 21 in that. So you can see that baked into the Cam and Jabari pluses with Sengun there. Now you look at Cam, Sengun, and Jalen. Now remember, Jalen, for the most part, has been a negative. So that's a plus 9.5 and 179. That's significant. So the 3, and I'm going to use Sengun as kind of a fixed rate for these lineups because he's our best player and he's a guy that's going to be on the court when it matters the most. So he's going to be in these lineups as kind of a fixture on there compared to the other players around them. Sengun, Cam, and Fred VanVleet a plus 13.1 in a lot of possessions, 278. So that's a big positive. So we're seeing that Cam with Sengun is a positive when you have Jabari, Jalen, and Fred VanVleet on there. So when you add in the third player being Dillon Brooks, which is our other starter, that's where you see the negative. So he's a negative 15.3. So that negative 2-man lineup with Sengun is not because of Sengun. It's because of the negative 2-man lineup with Dillon Brooks. If you had Sengun and then any lineup with Dillon, it becomes a negative for them. So basically, Cam and Sengun work, which I think is important for us going forward because we're trying to answer the question, honestly, who needs to come off the starters, right? If you look at our starting 5, you have Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr., Dillon Brooks, and Alperen Sengun. I can guarantee you, as long as Fred is here, he's going to start. Alp is going to start. Jabari is locking that down. He's going to start. So the people that have been struggling more recently is Jalen for sure. And then Dillon has been up and down. He's a vet, so coach gives him a longer role. But let's say a year from now, does it become a conversation for those 2 spots between Dillon and Jalen as far as like who should get their spot taken? You got Tari on the heels of Dillon Brooks, and then you got Cam Whitmore on the heels of Jalen, and to me, and Dillon Brooks, because if Jalen and Cam are playing good and Jalen turns a corner, that's a big if. It gets a little interesting. And then with Amen Thompson, it's a minus 20.8. So these lineups have not been good with Cam and Amen on the floor. And it's usually dependent on more on Amen. And to Amen's defense, Coach Udoka puts him out there with some horrible lineups, right? He's usually out there with Aaron Holiday, Tate, some of those bench lineups that haven't been good, Jeff Green, etc. So he hasn't really had a lot of opportunity to be isolated with the starters to get his on-court differential as high as you wanted to. So those are the 3-man lineups. So looking at 5-man lineups, because he doesn't have this is like 2 4-man lineups, so you might as well go to 5. In the 5-man lineups, the most frequent one that he's played in is the bench unit that we started off the season with. That to me is hurting Amen Thompson's minuses. It's the bench unit where we expected Jalen Green to be able to cook. If y'all remember early on in the season, the 2s were Jalen and Jabari together, and with Cam, Amen, and Aaron Holiday, and that their job was to let kind of Jalen and Jabari be the facilitators, and that lineup in 98 possessions is a negative 17.8. So we're losing by 17 points when they're on the court together. You look at the next most frequent one is the one that we've seen more recently. This is with Dillon out when and him being injured or being benched. When Cam comes in the game with the starters, with Jalen, with Fred, with Jabari, with Sengun, in those 44 possessions, we're beating teams by 47 points per 100 possession. That is damn near 50 points. So this is a very elite lineup. You guys have seen it on the tape. They are actually doing work with this lineup, and it is something that I am very, very impressed to see with such a young player. And then the other lineup we're going to look at is the one where Dillon is in place of Fred VanVleet. And anytime Fred is not on the lineup, it's trash, right? So minus 32.1, whereas just Dylan and Amen Thompson out there with Cam Whitmore with Jalen Green. So this lineup is I don't like it, right? I don't like it for multiple reasons. On there, one, the two rookies, two, Jalen Green, three, Dylan Brooks, and then the only positive to me on there just in a vacuum is Alperen Sengun. If Jalen was better, I know a lot of people are still high off of his recent turnaround, especially after the Lakers game, but what the data does tell me, he's been pretty bad, right? Overall, in aggregate, recently he's been good. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but I'm not going to get too carried away with Cam. But one thing that, once again, it begs a question, right? Him and Jalen play well together. That's a given right now. That's what we've seen. Jalen and Cam, they're a positive in their 2-man, 3-man, and 5-man lineups. Cam plays well with Sengun. Cam plays well with Jabari. He plays really well with Fred VanVleet. He does not play well with Amen Thompson. He does not play well with Dylan Brooks right now. And one of the mysteries is going to be how you integrate Tari Eason into this. And so that collection of players, this is not a knock on any one of them. It just tells you that, one, the Rockets' competition next year is going to be really vicious, and I love it. I'm here for it. If it was me at this moment in time, right now, I have open competition for Dylan's spot and for Jalen's spot if Jalen isn't as consistent as you want him to be. If Jalen keeps playing like this for the rest of the year, you know what I mean? You keep that in mind. Obviously, he's going to come into next year as a starter, and then you see what he brings on his contract year. Because if he turns up to the player that we expect him to be, then this conversation is moot. It's really just Dylan Brooks that's up, and that's going to be a battle between Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore. Also, ask some more philosophical questions about who do you think is a better bench player? A guy that is going to give you a lot of random chaos plays in offense, in transition, and play really elite defense in Tari Eason, or a guy that is going to give you instant buckets. He can stretch the floor, can run in transition as well, is a pretty decent defender. To me, it all comes down to how they fit with with the starters, right? Which one complements the needs more that we have on the starting five? For me personally, I'm leaning towards next year. I want Tari starting because the defense to me is more important, right? Even though our offense is pretty bad right now, I feel like with some just anything more than we're doing right now, they can be pretty good. If Jalen isn't trolling, he can be pretty good. And if Jalen is bad, then obviously to me, Cam should start in that role. And then I think Tari should start. I'd love to see a Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, Jabari, Sengun, and Fred VanVleet as Amen kind of catches up. All of this is going to be determined by players' internal development, right? All of this is going to be determined by internal development, but so far so good. It is great to see that Cam is actually leaving a mark on the team and is pushing down the Aaron Holidays and Tates of the world when it comes to minutes. Amen Thompson has been playing good as well. He's one of our better perimeter defenders. I'll wait a little bit more to more games and more tape to do a more in-depth look at how he impacts the team. But right now, Cam is definitely out of their class. He's the guy that's saying, give me more minutes, and I'd love to see more minutes from him.
For him against the Rockets this season. Good pass. Corner three.
That's fun to watch. Defense to offense. That was all Jabari Smith Jr. Unselfish.
So speaking of Jalen Green, one thing that I've noticed is that Jalen is really turned the corner, and it kind of started around that Detroit game about 5 or 6 games ago. He has been really playing differently, and it hasn't always been pretty, but there is a definitely an aggression there that I had not seen from him. Now, once again, I always refer to what I kind of laid out for him to have as a third-year leap as a guard, right? As a guard, I wanted him to attack the basket, drive. If you drive, you're going to score more points. And I think I projected if he just raised his drives by like 4 or 2 or 3 more drives per game, it'll give him at least 4 more points on his total, landing him at about 25 points per game or something, roughly like 24, 25 points per game, just by driving more. Because one thing we saw about Jalen, for all the guards in the NBA last year that had a certain amount of frequency of driving to the basket, he led the league in fouls drawn, right? So that means when he drives to the basket, he gets fouled because he's fast. And yeah, he gets there. The only problem is that when he gets to the basket, doesn't really know what he's doing, jumping too early, too small, loses the ball. So there's all those factors. But recently, you guys have been seeing him use his truck stick, right? You've seen him use his shoulders to move not only just small guys, but big guys out the way. And that is a great development for him. the thing about Jalen that makes these games different is that usually when he scores a lot of points, it's based on his three-point shooting. He has been horrible shooting the three in the stretch. So, and actually that's a positive for me because I feel like he could even out at just an average three-point shooter, and that is perfectly fine. But the fact that he has been shooting bad and still scoring at the rate that he has, getting to the free throw line, and also being able to rebound, which is another aspect of his game that has picked up entirely this season, is just something that you really love to see. So if you look at his first 41 games, which is prior to this 5-game stretch that we've seen recently, 17 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, 3 assists. Very pedestrian for a third-year player who's supposed to be a star, right? 39% from the field is nasty. 32% from three is nasty. And then 80% from the line is about average. But look at the drives per game. Only 8.8 drives per game, which is around the same he was doing as a rookie, right? Nothing really special there. Field goal on drives, 42%, which is below league average. Free throw attempts on drives, 1.9, which is low for him. He's usually in the 2s. And then points off a drive, 5.5 of his 17 points were off of drives. That means the other ones were off of mid-range. So the other 11 points are off mid-range and 3-point shots. So this is what we saw from him for most of this season. Then you move on now to this last 5 games with Jalen. 26.8 points in the last 5 games, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 48% from the field, right? 48% from the field. That's damn near a 10% increase in his field goal percentage. 30% from three. The threes are actually worse. He's not shooting great from three, but to me, it's not a positive, but I'm actually comforted by that, seeing this level of production. I've never seen him have a stretch like this scoring where it's not based on just fluke random 3-point shooting. 86% from the free throw line as well. Look at the drives per game. 11.4. So that's a plus 2.6 increase, right? So he was scoring 17, and in these past 5 games, he's scoring 26. So just by driving almost 3 more times per game, that aggression has opened up the rest of his game, and he's scoring almost 10 points more in that because he's getting to the line and he's making his layups. Field goal on drive. Talk about making your layups, 52%. That is slightly above league average, and that's a plus 10% increase. Free throw attempts on drives is up by 1 to 2.8, and points on drives is 10.8. 40% of his points in this stretch are coming from drive. That's damn near half his points are on drives. This is different, right? This is not the standard Jalen goes 6 for 9 from 3 and scores 30. So what I see this as is what I call turning the corner. Because what he is doing right now is totally replicable. It totally scales up. And you guys know I'm very big on scalability for guys and how they play in the NBA. If you show me a skill that I can see you doing in the playoffs, then I can say that that's something that we can hang our hat on. If this becomes his bread and butter, getting downhill with physicality, getting downhill with speed and attacking these mismatches, attacking bigs in a drop and finishing, and he finished damn good against the Lakers, then all of this talk about he should start, not start, trade Jalen is just moot at that point. Consistency, though, what I said earlier about young guys, the mark of a player that you know is going to be like a really good player is when they start being consistent. Can Jalen keep this up? That's the question we have to answer right now. I love what I'm seeing from him. I love the focus on both ends of the court. He's still not great on defense. You want to see more. If you look at some of the drive stats, he's not passing out of those drives, so the tunnel vision is still there. The assist rate is still low on those drives because once you make that a superpower where you can drive to the rim and teams start trapping and double teaming and sending help early, you got to be able to kick it out. And if he can't do that, he's going to struggle again. So I'm going to be watching for that, right? Now teams are going to put him on the scouting report. So Darvin Ham is not going to be the only coach calling him a part of the three-headed monster, right? They're going to see him as part of that three-headed monster for real, and they're going to start sending that help. If he cannot leverage his ability to get to the rim into passes and generate open threes for teammates, then we're going to have a different discussion. But the way I view him right now, he's like a kid learning how to walk, and they're just getting their balance, right? He's getting his balance, figuring out, I can use my legs, I can step here and here. Once he gets that part down, what you want to see is the next level, which is the leveraging that. It doesn't have to be no Chris Paul type passes, just drive and kick. Basic drive and kick, knowing where your shooters are, knowing where the help is coming from. That sounds easy enough, but a lot of guys struggle with that, right? We see a lot of tunnel vision guys with this. So That is what you want to watch out for. One, can he keep learning how to walk with the consistency of getting to the rim? 11.4 is really good. It's not like SGA, who's up in the 14s and 15s, but for Jalen, this is roughly around where I wanted him to be. So we're going to keep an eye on that going forward. So keep an eye on that. I really think he's turning the corner.
To the winning thing, Houston has trailed off a little bit. I think overall, just as a general sort of take on him and the growth we've seen in year 3, I feel like this is a guy that's going to make 8 or 9 All-Star games, multiple All-NBA teams. If Houston builds this thing right, be in the conversation, at least for, that top 5 or 6 conversation of MVP. I really believe this guy is that good. Am I off base with that?
So Alperen Sengun's contract, just like Jalen's, is coming up. And, the fan base, as usual, is torn on, should he be a max player? Should he not be a max player? Are the Rockets going to pay him the max? Some people say no, they don't see it. Some people say yes. To me, just stepping back, I think as long as he sustains what he's at right now, and even if he incrementally improves, even if it's just increments, like he scores 1 more point next year, he probably is going to garner the max, right? Because, he's 21 years old, once again, averaging 21 points, 9.2 rebounds, 5.1 assists, right? Those are not stats to sneeze at for a player his age. Shooting 54% from the field, 28% from 3, 71 at the line. His free throws have got up really high, and then he's starting to tank them again. But is Sengun a max player? Let's look at the comps for players that are 21 years old. So let me pull that up. So what you're looking at right now, there's only 2 players in NBA history that have averaged 20 plus or more points, 9 or more rebounds, or 5 plus or more assists while being 21 or younger. It's Alperen Sengun and Luka Doncic, right? Only 2 players in NBA history, in the entirety of the NBA as we have it. So do you think that the Rockets are going to say that, we're going to let him walk, right? They might let him go to free agency and see what he could get. Maybe, I don't know if Stone is that cutthroat. Is he that prudent? For me, whether he gets it, the money or not, I really, doesn't matter to me. If the Rockets, if he stays and we don't pay him the max, I'm happy, right? But I think that as far as some people thinking the Rockets are going to draw the line in the sand and say that if he wants the max, rookie max, which is I think 25% of your team salary, if he wants that, then we're walking away. That's cap, big cap. If Stone does that, then he probably loses his job because another team is going to pay him that. There are a lot of teams that have a lot of money they want to throw to a young 21-year-old that's on pace with stats that Luka Doncic are featured on. So, a lot of the concerns with Alperen Sengun is going to be not his offense, though. It's the defensive concerns. One of the things we saw from that Brooklyn game was how he struggled against Nick Claxton. And then you see this Lakers game, he is having a great game against Anthony Davis. So it's kind of a perplexing thing. So I kind of drilled down I wanted to see what are the players that in his matchups, what are his best matchups and what are his worst matchups. And data's kind of surprising, right? So what you're looking at, and I've done something like this before in the past. These are Sengun's top matchups on high frequency, right? Nikola Jokic, obviously we played Denver about 60 times this season already. When he's guarded by Alperen Sengun, holding him to 43.8%. Jokic's season average right now is 58%. So that's damn near 15 points less than his average when Alp guards. Anthony Davis, holding him to 45%. His average on the season against the rest of the league, 53.5. Wemby, holding him to 30%. His average 46.5%, and then Embiid holding him to 46%. His average is 53.9. Okay, I want you guys to just keep a mental note. What do you think these guys have in common before I reveal it? The worst matchups he has, Sabonis is giving him 63% when they face each other, where his average is 61. Jalen Duren is 66%, where his average is 64. Bismack Biyombo, his stepdad, is giving him 60%, where his average is 56. And then Nick Claxton is just blazing at 87% against Alperen Sengun, where his average is 63%. Before I tell you guys what it is, what do you guys think the reason is? I'm going to give you a little pause for you to think to yourself. This is like one of those PBS shows where the answer pops up on the screen, with the kids shows. But what do you think the common factor? You look at that top list, you look at this bottom list, what do they have in common? So let's reveal that. So what they have in common, let's look at the play types of these players, right? For Jokic, his number one play type is post-ups, which is a form of isolation for a big man. That's 26.4 of his plays per synergy. For AD, is an even split between post-ups and pick and roll, roll man. So that is, and the Lakers, they're very bipolar. If AD wants to play the 5-1 game, he's going to roll. If he wants to be a wing, he's going to face up and post. So let's just assume when we play the Lakers, usually AD wants to isolate on LP. So that he's mostly a post-up isolation against LP. Wemby plays like a guard, so he's a spot up. So that means LP is guarding him in space. And then for Embiid, once again, his number one frequency is post-ups. So, and the guys that killed Alperen Sengun, what they have in common is the same thing. They're all highest frequency is roll man. So pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll, roll man, roll man, roll man. So what this means, what does this mean, Frank, right? What this means is that basically in a vacuum, Alperen Sengun can guard. And to me, the eye test shows it. He can guard in isolation. He can guard in space. And this is what I've been, saying his whole, since the season started for sure, that Sengun can be a good defender. And he's shown that in spurts throughout the season where he just has to learn to know where to be. He can be a great positional defender. He can be a great in a vacuum defender. And to me, that is the more important than being a guy that can stop a lob threat. The reason being, these players, the Durans of the world, the Biombos, all they do is feed off of the lobs of their guards, right? So, and pick and roll, guarding a pick and roll is a defensive concept that is based on the team you have surrounding you. If Jalen Green is playing the low man or he's the weak side helper, then the Sabonis, Duran, all of them are going to have high scores against your team. The pick and roll is especially stopping a roll man, it's pretty easy to do. You're going to concede some things though, right? If you want to stop a roll man, you're going to do two things, right? One, you can just leave your big alone, like LP could just stay with the roll man and not let them get to the basket. What that does is means your guards have to be that much better at fighting over the screen and stopping the opposing guard, which in the NBA that's really hard to do, right? Because we have all these elite guards. The other thing you could do is have your weak side helper come down and tag the roll man aggressively. What that does is it leaves a lot of corner shooters open. Now there's about 5 guys in the NBA right now that could make that corner pass. So you're talking about the elite of the elite guards, the Halliburtons of the world, the Trae Youngs of the world, the Lucas that can make that pass. So on average, against 80%, not 85, 90% of the league, if you just tag the big man and let Sengun play at the level of the screen, you can stop a pick and roll. And we've seen it in spurts. I'm not sure if it's Coach Udoka that is at fault for telling him to drop, or is it their, I don't know what they're, I can't tell because it changes on damn near a play-by-play basis. But we've seen it. When we played Portland, Sengun was high hedging on Anthony Simons because he was killing us on the 3, right? Able to show, that's what you call a show. You show at the level of the screen, you recover back to your assignment. But before you recover, somebody from the weak side has to help and momentarily come down and take over the assignment till you retreat back to it, and then they go back to their corner. The problem is, once again, the alignment for the Rockets, that's Jalen Green. That's it's just random people. It's small people. Like, you need a man to be there. In the 2017-18 Rockets, when we had our Tuck Wagon lineup, that defender was usually going to be Mbah Moute, PJ Tucker, one of our big guys, right? That can come down and if they had to fight with that big man, if they had to scram switch or do anything on the weak side. So right now, we just don't have the personnel to play that. We don't have them in the starting lineup for sure. One thing I've seen, they kind of looking back at the Cam Whitmore thing. Cam gets busy with the big man, right? Taking it back to the Cam Whitmore thing. Cam gets busy with the big man because he's going to try to at least weak side shot block because he has the body and athleticism too, and he's big enough to actually stop a rolling big. So what we're seeing from the pick and roll defense from the Rockets, in my opinion, is not all of Sengun's fault. He cannot play 2. Like, he can't play the guard coming and the big man rolling. There's about 3 big men that could do that. Jared Allen could do that. Rudy Gobert could probably do that. And maybe I'm missing somebody else, but that is a very rare skill set for a big to do in today's NBA. The only problem with those Jared Allens and the Goberts of the world, when you get to the playoffs, they're unplayable. You know why? Because they can't score. So it takes us back to the Luka Doncic comparison. Does Alp deserve the max? He can guard in isolation, right? On pick and rolls, you have to have a team defense built around him to be able to make up for the fact that he's not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, because that's who people expect the kid to be, right? He's supposed to be Jared Allen on defense, and he's supposed to be Luka on offense, which to me is an impossible player. Like, you guys have to understand, almost every superstar in the NBA has a glaring weakness that their team builds around to try to make up for. So the question for the Rockets is Sengun worth it? Once again, if you're on pace with Luka, you heard what JJ Redick said about him on the offensive side of the ball, and you're looking at his matchups, because when it comes to the playoffs, teams aren't spamming pick and roll in the fourth quarters of playoff games. It's going to come down to mano y mano. They're going to hunt mismatches, attack, because at that point, if you have a smart team, you've made it to the playoffs and you made it to the second and third round. By then, I'm sure you can guard the pick and roll, because every team in the NBA runs a pick and roll. Can you guard your matchup? That's what it's going to come down to. Can you survive as a big man on an island when you're guarding guards and wings and things like that? To me, Alp has shown he can. I'd rather him at some point switch out on defenders than do the drop coverage that they're doing. Coach Udoka, to me, needs to be a little more creative with their alignment, and Alp definitely can play better. Against the Nets, he was trash. Right? He was soft. I don't know what you know what I mean? He's a young player. So as Jalen struggles on stuff, Cam, he's still 21. Once again, we're not going to act like he's a finished product. But to the question about paying him, I think right now in the NBA market, whether it's in Houston or anywhere else, the dude is going to get a rookie scale max. It's just that, are the Rockets going to be the ones that are going to give him that? That's a question. To me, it's a no-brainer. But you don't know with this team, with this front office, what their views are. I think it's pretty clear at this point, but, I don't know. But going forward, I mean, I think, the Lakers game really did put on display what the Rockets are really good at, what some of these young guys are really good at, and what are some of the positives that you see from this rebuild that, you can kind of use to kind of pacify you why they go through their ups and downs. I still think Stone needs to make a move at the deadline. It's fast approaching. I think about 9 or 10 days away is going to be the trade deadline for this calendar year. What are they going to do? I don't know, right? To me, get some spacing out there, right? Get two NBA players that can take over the Tate minutes and the Jeff Green minutes. Aaron Holiday, to me, is a situational guy. There are some positive lineups with him on there, but we just need some spacers. We need guys that can shoot and a backup five still, that can come in and give us a non-Jeff Green 5 look, especially against teams that want to roll out the Jalen Durans of the world, roll out the Nick Claxtons of the world. But all of that to me is easy stuff. You don't have to trade the farm to do it. I think the Rockets can do it. I think they're a viable team. I still think that we should be in the play-in at minimum. I don't care what nobody says. If we lose 10 games in a row, this team, Coach Udoka is losing a lot of these games with his lineups. Let's be for real. He's losing a lot of these games. If we keep it a buck, like some of the lineups he puts out there, my God, I got him on pack watch. Not for being fired, but just the level of coaching that I've seen from him. A little disappointing. Some of the lineups in the offense, and then also, with the roster upgrades. What is Rafael Stone going to do? But y'all let me know, man. Do you agree with what I just said? One, let me ask you this question: will you pay Sengun the max, or will you let him test the free agent waters? And if you're not going to pay him the max, what are you willing to pay him? Do you think Jalen's streak is sustainable, or is it a fluke? And do you think Cam Whitmore should start at some point in his career, either this year or next year? Let me know in the comments and in the chat. I know it's been a kind of a couple days between videos. Been very, very busy. Try to get them out more often. We'll see. But appreciate y'all for supporting the channel. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. Keep rocking with the Chop Shop, and we're going to keep dropping that.
Hats off to Alp. He's improved so much on the defensive end. Pulled the chair on Anthony Davis and got the block.
3 games. Whitmore for 2. Snubbed down. They have no answers. No answers for the Rockets rookie Cam Whitmore.